There is. I just don't believe I can have a show of any sort, and at some point not have you on because you've got like too many smart things to say. And I'm going to tell all of you. I should start letting you, Jim, who's one of our moderators here. I know ahead of time who I'm having on. If you can find Will's many places, he's on Blue Sky. I don't know if he's on Twitter anymore. I know
I just post my stories on there. I don't like comment or anything, and I'd like to quit, but I also want people to read my work, so I send out a few links, but that's about it.
this
So
is the dilemma a lot of us have had. I feel like
yeah,
my videos convince some people. This live stream goes to Twitter, and it hasn't given me. I keep trying to get all my data from it, and Elon is, I don't know. Maybe I have to sign something up that I have to allow my parietal lobe to be Neuralinked or something. I'm not sure, but I can't seem to get my data off of there because then at least I can make an objective decision. Though I think what I'll probably do is, at that point is do nothing else like right now. But it's hard because I do think these videos have value. I've just started a Substack. I do think what I write can convince people. I do think what I stream can convince people. It may not, but it has a chance. And so it's tough. But I will not.
you
Yeah, go
want
ahead.
to reach people because that's what we do. We're communicators, and it's tough because you feel like sometimes you have to make a deal with the devil to connect with people.
Yep.
Certainly if you're using Elon's site, but
Well, a lot of
you know,
devils these days, my friend.
yeah,
I tried to decide whether I was going to start streaming to Instagram, and I should keep I don't use Threads. I always use Threads just to put up my links. But it's like I
right.
want to convince people. So all I can promise people is at this point on Threads and Twitter, I'm not going to do. If people I know well ask me a question where to find me or something, I'll answer it and that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Well,
Otherwise, I'm not. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. I mean, so far, Blue Sky's been an excellent experience.
Yeah, it's good.
So yeah, so look for me, Will Bunch at bsky at willbunch.bsky.social. It's amazing. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing to me is that in about two months I mean, I had an account that I didn't really use and had a few thousand followers or something, but when I started actively using it after the election,
It takes off there. It really does. The
well, I
engagement's
now,
great.
yeah, well, yeah, I now have more followers on Blue Sky than I do on Twitter. So,
That's
uh,
hilarious. I
yeah, I
haven't
know,
reached
and
that
and and
point, but
and the Twitter followers, that took 16 years of like glacial but steady growth to get
right.
to that point, and 2 months, it's because there's a lot of excitement around it. There's like people are posting these so-called starter packs, right?
Yep.
So you can find the people you really want to hear from, and it's really working. It's working, and people are excited and happy to be there. And it's not, no, it's, I wouldn't
All
call
of
it.
that is good. I only have one criticism of the starter pack thing, and that's that too many people, I think, will just be like, I'm going to put all the biggest accounts in there because maybe they'll follow me back. And there's a few people that I feel like there's some really smart people and creative people and talented people who have a few thousand followers in there that I wish people. I tried to put one together where I tried to share some people who had smaller accounts because I looked at yours. I think you've got 80 or 90,000. I've got like 40 something thousand. I mean, we've got pretty decent sized accounts in there. There are people that have smaller ones that are smart people, and
Yeah,
I
yeah,
wish more people would share them.
you make such a good point. It's funny. I work at the Philadelphia Inquirer with a columnist who, um, she does some national stuff, but her focus is a little bit more local. I mean, my job is supposed to be national.
Right.
She's got more of a local focus, but she's one of the best columnists in America, Helen Ubenius.
Yeah, I read her stuff.
Yeah, she's fantastic, and she just wrote this killer column about this basketball arena scandal that we have here
Uh-huh.
in Philly, and I realized that, I mean, she had like 600 followers on Blue Sky, which is just a crime. So I think I helped her get over 1,000. So that's
Well, I'll
good.
look
But
for
yeah,
her and try to share it because as people here know, I've talked about this often. Um, that is what I did with the money I saved when I canceled my New York Times, LA Times, and Washington Post subscriptions. And I know you know it, Will. I was out there like, man, I was like a preacher telling everybody the Philadelphia Inquirer, the
You
only
did.
newspaper to call on not on Joe Biden, but Donald Trump to drop out after the debate for being a serial liar. They've got great columnists and they're owned by a foundation. They are not a corporate entity, like the best, to me, one of the best papers in the country. So I subscribe
Yeah.
there, so I read a lot of folks. It used to be I just read you, and Will has a great newsletter, and Jim. If you all the links, I know you're sharing them, Will, but we'll have them up here in the chat for people to, because Will really is. I mean, he's on that echelon of I'm just waiting till you win your Pulitzer. It's inevitable, unless they
Yeah,
don't know
well,
what they're doing. It's inevitable.
when they start giving Pulitzer prizes to liberals, I don't know when that's going to start, but
Fair enough.
Maybe I'll have a shot. But yeah. Well, two things. I mean, you have been outstanding in promoting us, and it's been great. And yeah, I mean, I would just it's interesting that we have actually last year, when like the Washington Post certainly, and I would imagine some of those other similar outlets were losing subscribers, right? People were
Yep.
canceling. I mean, 300,000 people canceled their Washington Post subscriptions. We were gaining, and I not gain, unfortunately, not gaining an equivalent number to that,
Right.
but we're seeing growth because people respect the fact that we're not owned by a billionaire.
Yep.
We're owned by a nonprofit foundation that's committed to accountability journalism, and we're not perfect, and when we,
Of course you're not, but
yeah,
nobody
but
expects that. I
yeah,
just expect honesty. I expect transparency. I expect if you make mistakes, you apologize and don't all circle the wagons like the New York Times people do and attack everybody else. And I mean, it's just such a sad,
yeah,
I mean, I don't have,
and,
people know how I feel about the media here. And I
yeah,
want to,
and I think to the extent that we have I wouldn't even call it an ideology because that's the wrong word, but to the extent that we have a philosophy, it's pro democracy,
and that's
and
all I ever wanted.
yeah.
Partisanship for democracy. That's the partisanship.
I was just arguing, to move a little bit into maybe some substance and what's in the news. I don't know if you or your listeners saw today. Every day now, there's something coming out of the Washington Post and the kind of
Oh God, what did
it,
Bezos do
it,
today? Is he doing
yeah.
a documentary on Tiffany too? Is that what he's doing? No.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, today they put out a new mission statement, which is, I mean, that's always you always know the sink is shipping, the excuse me, the ship is
Yes.
sinking, or the sink is shipping, one or the other.
They both the same.
The ship is sinking when somebody puts out a new mission statement, right? Well, I guess maybe the phrase democracy dies in darkness is still going to exist somewhere, but their new mission statement is, storytelling for all of America or something like
Well,
that. And
democracy doesn't dies in daylight, except for the fact that
yeah, and I forget
that
forget the
Bezos
whole
can't go out in daylight because he's a vampire. Is that the new one or no?
forget the whole democracy thing. Now it's just stories for all of America. But the article in which was this story was broken, which was in the New York Times, of course, uh, uh, said, people have talked to Bezos about the paper, and it's like, well, we've got to appeal to the firefighters in Cleveland and blue collar people, and we need to bring in more conservative readers.
Oh, give
And
me a break.
and to me, just to finish that point,
Yeah.
I mean that's so. For somebody who spent $250 million to buy a newspaper, is just such a lack of understanding of the environment we're in right now, because
No.
and anybody who's a conservative, any of the 74 or whatever it was, 77 million people who pulled the lever for Donald Trump, they hate the Washington Post, they hate the mainstream media. There's no great story you're going to tell that's going to get
Yep.
a Trump voting firefighter in Cleveland to start reading the Washington Post. They're listening to Joe Rogan or
Or
whatever.
local talk radio, and they're
Yeah,
watching Fox. And there's a couple
right.
ironies in that right there. If I can say quickly, one is, of course, like it's ridiculous that when you have the Washington Times right there, that's where they're going to go if they're going to go somewhere in
Yeah,
Washington.
that's a great point. Yeah, right.
And
Yeah.
B, the other paper that I've always talked up, and I don't even know who the owners are, but in the case of the Cleveland Plain Dealer, when they're the head of their editorial guy, Chris, what was his name? I'm forgetting it,
Yeah.
made a statement that we are going to cover this election honestly, that we are not going to pretend that one of these two candidates, when Biden was still in, one of these two candidates didn't try to overthrow the election. We're going to be honest and upfront about that one will not accept the results. And they said, yes, we will share bad news on Joe Biden when it happens, but we are not going to play this game. And I subscribed to them too. I thought they had some of the best coverage, so that maybe that firefighter in Cleveland could read his own paper or her own paper and learn a whole bunch about honesty and not what Jeff Bezos is shoveling.
Why does that guy need to read the Washington Post? Exactly. But yeah, I mean to your point, I mean that's something we totally agree on is pro democracy, because to me, when you talk about should papers be biased or whatever, like no, I don't think they should be biased towards Democrats or Republican. I mean, God knows there's so much about the Democratic Party as an institution that can and should be criticized, right? But should papers be pro democracy? Absolutely, because you cannot have journalism in a system that's not democratic, and
Right.
unfortunately, we may be about to prove that in the next couple of years, to see how hard it is. Frankly, we're already seeing it to some extent in some of the bended knee stuff that's going on right now. And Trump hasn't even taken the oath of office yet, but just
Think about how much we've
obeying in
seen.
advance. Yeah.
Right. I mean, ABC News and Bezos
Yes.
and Zuckerberg. I mean, it's so overwhelming.
It
That,
is, and I mean, and I have to say, the last couple of weeks, even though these things that are happening are the kind of things that you and I and other people have been predicting for the last couple of years would or could happen if Trump was reelected. It doesn't make it any less demoralizing to see some of this stuff actually take place. Like nobody is or should be gleefully saying, "Oh, I told you so. This is going to happen." It's dispiriting to see, and you'd hope for something different, and it's I feel at this point, 4 days before Trump gets inaugurated, we're at a place where there needs to be active resistance to what is happening in Washington with this new administration coming in, and but we need a new way. We need new ways of doing it. I think
clearly, yeah.
everybody agrees that whatever happened 8 years ago, and some of what happened 8 years ago was good. I mean, like people who went to the airports to protest the travel ban in the first month of Trump's first, that was good.
Women's March right out of the gate was
Yeah.
pretty good too.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. And but I think there is a rightful sense that some of those tactics either won't work, or there's other obstacles. But I think.
But we need some of them from Democratic electeds too. We need those guys. I talk a lot about how they need to understand how the right controls the narrative, how the right gets attention. And yeah, it's hard to compete because so much of the corporate media, are lean in favor Trump, or just will kiss his butt for tax breaks or whatever it is. But they will cover spectacle. They want ratings and they want clicks. And if you can create the right spectacle, you can create the right events, you can create, the right messaging, you can get their attention. And numerous Democrats have proven that.
And there are different ways of protesting, and look, and we've seen in our lifetimes that a lot of times protests emerge when and how you least expect it, and it's when some kind of spark gives somebody a new idea. Like I mean, the one I'll cite, and I know it's got its fans and it's got its detractors, but you have to say it was an influential movement, and that's the Occupy movement in 2011, Occupy Wall Street, and the other
Sure.
Occupies in Philly and everywhere else. And nobody really saw that coming. And I guess
It got the media's
it
attention, and that was
yeah.
what was necessary,
Yeah,
right?
as I've pointed out, and I've written a few columns about this, and I was in the pro Occupy camp, kind of from the beginning.
I
But
think I was overall, right? I mean,
yeah,
it's not
right.
to say
Well,
there
look,
weren't
and,
some,
and there was things. Look, I
but the
mean,
general sentiment, yes.
yeah, I mean, it was a flawed model, which is why the camps, there were a couple major flaws in it, which is why the camps in the movement didn't really last that long. But there still was a lasting legacy, and I would say particularly in starting a conversation about income inequality. And when you say, well, what did they accomplish? Well, I mean, a lot of states and cities were able to eh, raise minimum wages, or even get the $15
Yeah.
wage. And as a result, a lot of employers nationwide are paying $15 today for jobs that they were paying $8 or $9 for
I like to
at,
point
at
out
the
to the
start of that.
irony of the fact, by the way, that and I'm sure you've come into contact with him or may know him, that one of the early proponents of that was Nick Hanauer, who's a funder on the left, who was a high school friend of Jeff Bezos and the number 6 investor in Amazon.
Yeah.
But I think when he saw Bezos becoming the megalomaniacal nut that he was, he actually got out early. If he'd stuck in there longer, he would have made even more money. And he made a decent amount of money, and now he's one of the biggest economic populists out there, yelling for people to raise his taxes. And in Seattle, because I did some PR around that, they were pushing for the $15 minimum wage.
Yeah,
And
no,
Nick,
no,
Nick,
I remember, I remember Nick and him getting involved, and that was helpful. And it's interesting. I mean, I don't think any help that a liberal billionaire, to the extent that there's a handful of them left, Mark Cuban, I don't know if he's liberal or what he is, but people
right.
friendly billionaires, if there are ways they can help the movement, that's great. But I think we all agree that the political movement that's needed right now has got to have basically it's got to have an anti-billionaire orientation.
Oh, it's bottom up.
And,
It's
and
it's
hey, if a billionaire wants to be anti-billionaire, he can join. But
that's right.
right?
Most of my
but
messaging on this show is just pointing out, even when I started my earliest rant here, I do a couple of these Cliff's. I call it Cliff's note, so they can't come after me if I use their term. But I do a couple of these where I do, and I went after Scott Jennings today and was just pointing out, the sort of situation of all the money McConnell brought in, and he was there by his side for all that. And he's got the biggest corporate PR firm in Kentucky, while they're letting him go on CNN as if he has any objective opinions to give, when McConnell and all of his corporate clients control him. And it's the point is it's us against them, and that's just the truth of it. Which is, there's, even if you're not a billionaire, it's the billionaires and that billionaire mentality of they should control everything. The oligarchs, the billionaires, the monopolies that are ludicrous at this point, that don't think they owe you an explanation for anything they do. They know you have to go back to them. They know that they can treat consumers like crap, the environment like crap, workers like crap. Like, this is second Gilded Age stuff, and we've gone beyond even the first one. So anybody who's not messaging this in a way where it is us against the billionaire owners of the Republican Party is doing something wrong. I mean, Elon Musk has an office in the White House, and he's a private citizen. And he goes to secret meetings. Everything they ever came up with as conspiracies about George Soros, Elon Musk is actually doing. He's going to private meetings where they're making economic decisions about all of our lives, and nobody ever voted for him. Not one vote. And
yeah,
he's in these meetings, and it's so yeah, I agree with you completely. I'm happy to have Mark Cuban. I know a little bit personally. He's a great guy. I know Nick Hanauer. There's
yeah,
some others I don't
sure,
know. I don't know Warren Buffett. I don't know, but anyone willing to help, happy to have you. And I don't, there are a couple of very good ones who've done nice things, but that shouldn't be the way our economy is run. That we have to worry on, the kindness of strangers, if you will, or the
yeah.
kindness of billionaires. That's not the way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, there's that group that gosh, I wrote about them once.
Patriotic
Yeah,
millionaires.
yes, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Yep.
Patriotic millionaires.
Yeah.
Yeah, and good for them. I mean, because they're advocating for the right cause, and it would hurt
Yeah.
take some money out of their pocketbook, but they 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 believe it's the right thing. But I mean, to me, and I've written about this a couple times recently, but to me, the way forward is, I mean, we're so locked into kind of our fixed views of the MAGA movement on one side, and a certain kind of Democrat on the other side, whether it's MSNBC watchers, or people who were calling themselves the Resistance 8 years ago, or those kinds of people, and yeah, those are absolutely two large groups in this country, but the reality is more complicated than that, and to me, the moment we really saw what's out there and what is possible, I think, and it's horrible to say this because it was obviously a terrible thing that I don't approve of, but was Luigi Mangione, and the United Healthcare worker, not what he did so much, but the way that so many people in the public reacted and came forward after that and said, "Look, I'm not approving of murder or anything, but I've got to tell you about my own experience with big insurance
Right.
and the thing and it's I mean that's a huge one, and that affects so many people, but it's not the only one. It's the experiences people have had with other aspects of modern capitalism. Certainly, just
Well, it's our
the,
form of capitalism, I would say, because
the housing crisis that
yep.
people, uh, certainly in our cities, and really in other places, experience. When you look at the number, all the numbers, everything that happened in 2024 with the election, what really stands out is people who, I mean, there's always going to be some people who never vote, but there are also millions of people who vote sometimes and don't vote sometimes,
I
and
was going to say the big number of irregular voters doesn't help either.
and in we now know the numbers of crunch. There's a gigantic number of people who voted for Biden in 2020. Maybe it was because they were riled up over the COVID situation, and just really strongly disapproved of Trump's handling of it. That was certainly a factor. Maybe it was um, young voters who gotten a little bit more cynical over the last 4 years since then, but weren't quite as cynical in 2020. But I've seen numbers as high. I mean, this seems a little high to me, but I've seen reports of high as 19 million people voted for Biden in 2020 who didn't show up so
It's
you're
possible, absolutely.
talking about if you had just gotten 20-25% of those people to show up and vote, this time around, you would have had a different outcome. I mean, it was one of the closest elections. So, I think
Yeah,
so I think the challenge for the next, well, I mean, years, because you want to maybe take back some of Congress in the next election, but the House anyway, for sure. But and 4 years when you want to take back the White House is how do you build a coalition that gets those people back out to the polls? And to me, I mean, Biden, God bless him. I mean, his attack last night on the oligarchy, I mean,
I wish they had done more of that sooner because he's right.
I guess better late than never, but I mean, that's at least give him a little bit of credit for laying some groundwork there
Well,
I mean,
I
he,
agree.
yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, it's one thing to get the warning. It's another thing of what do you do with it. Just as an aside, because I was thinking about this a lot today, is so many commentators have understandably compared it to Eisenhower and the famous warning about the military-industrial complex. But I mean, the thing about Eisenhower's warning is It was spot on. It was courageous for him to say that in public.
Yep.
Surprised a lot of people.
And he
But
was a Republican. There was a time when Republicans said stuff like that. Amazing.
well, that's another thing about it. But you know, none of that stopped us from going into Vietnam, right?
You're
And
right.
and frankly, none of it. I mean, the military-industrial complex. I mean, look at the way, look at the way that both parties trip over themselves today to greenlight massive increases every year in the Pentagon budget.
Well, I would say this, Will. Are you a fan of any sort of the Avengers or anything like that?
no, absolutely not. So
Okay. All right, that's fair because I was the comparison I was going to make is I was going to say there's a group that behind the major group called Hydra, who are the ones, and it's sort of in that world they're the German scientists who came over here, which is based on reality. We did bring German science and had were the hidden corporate forces behind the scenes. And the truth of the matter is that he warned about that. You're right. We know what happened with Vietnam and various other. I mean, my God, how many times did we just go and fight for the hell of it? I always point out to people that Grenada was just a way of getting people to forget about Beirut and the barracks explosion and be like, let's go somewhere easy where there's. And you wrote a book on Reagan, so you can speak even more than me. Let's go somewhere where there's 4 medical students and like 6 troops, but we'll raise the American flag and we'll say we beat communists and everybody will love us. And it just feels like you're right about the defense budget and pharma, although we finally beat them on Medicare negotiation of drugs and $35 insulin, but they're trying to claw back at that right now. But that is why this needs to be, and it's been this way for a while. Again, the Mangione, the shooting, what all that shows to me is if you know your history, and I know you do because you write these. What I like about you is you remind me about what Frank Rich used to do. He was a play, he used to be a critique of plays initially. So the way he saw his political critiques is he's critiquing entertainment, which is what politics sadly had become. And you do that too. You weave in these other forces such that it's a broader world. It's not just the one thing you're looking at. And Mangione, I've said this before. I know there are people that sympathize with it. I don't care. You can't. We're not a society. We're either a society of laws or not. You don't get to go around shooting people on the street. That's not how you handle things. It doesn't mean that I don't think United Healthcare is horrible and that I think United and every other healthcare company and what they've done to people. And, I'm telling people, I just spent a week in France and, saw a French friend I hadn't seen in 25 years. Like, they don't even understand it because there's something wrong with you. You just go to the hospital, go to the doctor. They've got the cheapest and best healthcare system in the world. Yes,
yeah,
it's cheaper than ours and better. It covers everything you really need. And if you're a really rich person and you want to buy even more than that, you can do that. Go buy the extra stuff. But you don't have to worry like this might go wrong.
right.
If I'm going to be an entrepreneur, I may trip down the stairs, break my fibula, and they're not going to cover it because they're going to blame me, and then I'm screwed. Like there just aren't worries about things like that, and that's no way to live. It's
It's
just no way. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, the historical analogy that I made when I actually I was uh, uh, I'm an old man, so they give me time now. It's ridiculous. So I was trying to use it up in December after the election. So I was off when that story broke. But when I finally came back, I still had a lot to say about it. So I wrote a column in like mid-December uh, about that. And the analogy I made was to the urban riots in the 1960s, which also were terrible. Also, were very counterproductive in their long term impact, no matter how they felt for people taking part in them in the moment. But Martin Luther King got a lot of heat for saying, you've been leading the civil rights movement, and now black people are rioting and they're looting, and we have snipers, and what do you have
Yep.
about that? And what he said is, of course, I disapprove of this, et cetera, et cetera. But you have to understand that a riot is the voice of the unheard, and I mean that's how I felt about the Luigi Mangione thing. That
Yep.
uh, just like a sniper in Detroit in 1967, it was not an appropriate response, but but he did reveal that there's a large mass of unheard people, which gets
No,
back.
I understand why he did it. I find it, I take sort of a middle ground, I suppose. And I put up stuff like this. Chipmunk Milk, who's here often and all the time, and some of our other people. United Health employer, the slain executive Brian Thompson found to have overcharged some cancer patients for drugs by over 1,000%. I mean, they're not a good player in the market, and I
Yeah,
understand when frustration boils, and you're at a point where you're in pain constantly, like him. So I'm not even sitting here saying I don't understand why I did it. I fully do. I just also think that we do have to have rule of law, guys. If we
yeah.
don't,
Well,
if we handle it like the old west, all of this stuff, what we
I
do
mean,
is we need to regulate the hell out of these healthcare companies. Is what we need to do.
yeah. I mean, how many times, Cliff, have you and I talked about gun violence and just what a curse that is on American society? So
Right.
so to applaud any act of gun violence it would be hypocritical. I mean,
Can somebody quickly? I don't mean to cut you off, Will, but we have our one of our little trolls in here. Hal Sparks and Midas Touch are YouTube millionaire. Yeah, I go on Hal's show every week. Hal Sparks did a lot of stuff in the entertainment industry before, so you may be mixed up. But please just go back to your basement and sit there and watch Fox and Friends and eat your Cheetos and be sad about your pathetic life. Okay, back to you, Will.
okay, whatever that
I like
was.
having fun. I like having fun with it's a troll probably from Twitter who come in here and they try to insult the audience, and I do my best to mock them because why not? Go ahead.
Yeah. So.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut off your thought.
That's okay. I kind of maybe finished my thought. So.
Well, let me tell you a story. I've told people here before. Sadly, we lost my mother-in-law a few years ago, totally unrelated to something else. But when we went with her, she had her family originally, my wife's that part of her family from Sicily. And we went there. We just went again a year ago or something like that. But when we went for the first time about 20 years ago, we actually found old family. My wife's grandfather had come here with his family to lay the railroad, the tracks up in northern Ohio. He ended up getting a PhD at Ohio State in finance, taught finance at Miami, Miami of Ohio, where my wife went for 40 years. I mean, a great story there, right? But we went back and we found some of his family there in the town, which was funny right away because they were scared that we were there because I guess some people would come back and try to claim the land. We're like,
yeah.
no, we don't want your land. It's your land.
Yeah. Right. That's funny.
But
Yeah.
but the thing that was funny, that not funny, but my mother-in-law tripped down these brick in Taormina, these brick steps, and she turned her ankle. And we
Mhm.
went and took her to the hospital. And here's how the scene played out: a bunch of doctors who are hilarious, talking a lot with their hands, which I encourage. I'm a New Yorker, lots of Italians and Jews talking with their hands, and by the time they're done, they came over and they said, "We decided we're not going to charge her anything," and they just didn't charge her anything because the mentality is so different about what healthcare is. It is a basic need. I am
Yeah.
all for capitalism. I'm a small business owner. I have a couple of them. I'm all for capitalism when it comes to providing things that people like or want or whatever. But the basic needs of our society to me, which include transportation, which include healthcare, which include a number of things, just have to be taken care of by government. I'm
Or
sorry.
or the thing that I wrote a whole book about, which is higher education.
Yes. Oh my God, that.
Which is another. I mean, it's funny. I mean, we go on and on about the healthcare that they have in these European countries, and you're thinking, wow, it's amazing they do that one thing for their people. But it's not just that, because you also, if you live in most of these countries, I mean, it's not the same obviously in every country, but in some countries, like Germany, for example, I mean, higher education is essentially free, and
Mhm.
there might be some fees. Obviously you got to pay rent while you're going to college. So I mean, nothing is totally free in life, but the tuition and everything is free. And in other European countries, it's very minimal, which is
Yes. United
but
Kingdom, I think, is a little bit. I studied over there, but it's still very cheap. And my
yes,
two friends who I just saw when I was back in France, one from Livorno, I got Federico, Italian, and one from Grenoble, France, French. They both went to college, good colleges, basically for free.
yeah, and which is it's kind of the system that we had here in the United States in the 50s and 60s, where a few places like the state of California, most famously, but
Yep.
also in New York, your home,
Yeah, no, no,
our,
Sunni. I mean, it's the
our,
Sunni system and
mutual,
CUNY
our
system.
mutual hometown, right? CUNY.
Yeah,
Yeah. We're free, but even if if you went to University of Illinois, University of Kansas, or whatever, you're talking about a couple $100 a semester
it
back
was
then.
so cheap comparatively. Your book is almost perfect. Well, that both of them are. But it's funny because my big theme here that I talk to people about all the time, and feel free to disagree with me on any of this as a Reagan ologist. I don't know. We'll call you
Yeah,
something like that. But I said, look, we had not obviously massive challenges. We were nowhere near where we needed to be on civil rights, on equal rights for women, on gay rights. I'm not saying it was a perfect time.
right.
But the 1930s to the 1980s were the time where we reached a lot of our economic promise in this country, where we actually created the strongest middle class in the history of the world, where you had a working class that you could have one salary and you had your place, you could go away on vacation and you could do all of this. The top tax rate at times fluctuated between the 70s and 91%. These companies were regulated. We broke apart monopolies. And the thing where we traced, if you look at those graphs, most Western European countries, we were more liberal actually than some of them at that point. And then Reagan. And that's where where they keep going up like this and giving family and medical leave and this and that, and we fall off, to talk about myself, the edge of a cliff. Um, and we end up going into crazy neoliberalism and head in a completely different direction. Because if it hadn't just been for white males, if we had been able to add all those other groups, we had something pretty close. I mean, I'm not saying everything was perfect, but we had something pretty close to what we would want during those 50 years
Yeah,
economically.
that's exactly what I've argued. I mean, if you want a system, it's not a matter of saying, well, we should go back to the 50s, and then people say, well, it was only white males, which it was, and which is
Right.
a good point. But I think look at that era, and look at it as a template for the kinds of things we can do today. But you know, uh, but today we could do them for all people and not just for white men. But
Correct.
do the same things. And and I'm not telling you or even your audience anything they probably don't know, but I mean, strong labor unions were like a huge part of that, and a huge aspect of what Reagan did was breaking the power of labor unions, starting with the air traffic controllers and
Yep.
setting the signal. And that,
But
and that,
even taking that little bit from the University of Chicago business guides, that little thing that had efficiency being the most important thing in the economy, more important than anything else. It's almost like those guys, that one little line, and they started moving back towards monopolies because they would be more efficient, which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But maybe they thought
what,
they could
what,
stand. Yeah, go.
efficiency, and I think the efficiency comes out of the Milton Friedman doctrine, which is that uh, corporations' only responsibility is to their shareholder, right?
And that was terrible when we did that, because then
Yeah, because
companies didn't think about the local people anymore. They didn't think about consumers. They were responsible for a
well,
lot more. Yeah.
right. I think the two models are either shareholder or stakeholder. When you talk about stakeholder, you're talking about lots of people. You're talking about the workers, and you're talking about the
Yep.
community, and 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 what's so crazy is it seems like you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand that capitalism works better in the stakeholder model, because
Of
when
course. Yeah.
when you go to the shareholder model, you're trashing your customers, your consumers, that
Well, and everything, because your shareholders, there's no requirement that they live right there. They may be Russian oligarchs, which in Trump's case, they probably are for Truth Social or whatever the hell. So what interest do they have in our environment, in our workers, and our
well,
consumers? They don't care.
I mean, they're looking for, I mean, now that they've destroyed the middle class, they're looking for the next scam, and right now it's crypto, right? I mean, it's like,
God.
it's for the last 30 years, what's the latest finance oriented, get rich quick scheme.
Right. Remember derivatives? Those were great.
That's what I was just going to say. And I was going to say in the 2000s, it was derivatives and then the whole mortgage housing based scams and what was mortgage backed
Oh, that's
asset,
right. Mortgage-backed securities. These things, they
mortgage
take
backed securities. Yeah.
right. They
Right.
take pieces of this mortgage, that mortgage, and they even said it at times that half the guys that were selling these things didn't actually know how they worked. I mean, they didn't know what the hell was going. There were stories about people who were making $30,000 a year, and buying $800,000 houses. And I think some people you try to use that on both sides. And I would say, well, yes, if you're making $30,000 a year, you, the individual, should be more responsible than to buy an $80,000 house, $800,000 house. I think I could say that. Okay. But that doesn't change the fact that just because you should be more responsible, as a society, we have to have certain laws and rules and protections, and they should have never been allowed to buy that house, no matter what. I mean, we created Social Security because sadly people were not responsible enough to all put away for retirement. We are what we are. Evolution has placed us where it's placed us,
right,
and these things work.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, look at some of the biggest things that are out there ailing us right now. Addiction to like gambling and these like sports gambling websites, and then cryptocurrency. They're all people gambling that they can make something for nothing, whether it's on a bet or on investing in crypto or whatever. And sure, the people who are out there buying this, we wish they had more personal responsibility to say, hey, this isn't a good idea, but they're being preyed upon.
Right.
And the reason we have a regulatory framework, or did once have a regulatory framework, is to have some rules to stop people from preying on people's worst human instincts, because we know that works better.
The disinformation, you're right. I mean, again, and there's just the way when I see people trying to have political discussions and say what happened with Kamala Harris and this and that, and there are always people that want to say, oh, she ran a terrible campaign. Whereas, again, she only lost by 1.4%. The world leaders are all around in democracies lost. I mean, post COVID and inflation, and people were upset. People were sort of, and there were issues, and I'm sure there were some people that were racist and sexist and voted against her, no matter what she would have said. But in the end, this disinformation machine of the right, and it preys on people. It's the same kind of thing that preys on people on crypto and other things. It's filled with every financial scam, every political scam.
And it's hard.
It is. Yep.
Fighting disinformation is hard because you want to, at the end of the day, the foundation is really the First Amendment, right? And speech. And for better or worse, I won't say unfortunately, but for better or worse, free speech does mean you have a right to voice things that are like conspiracy theories or lies, frankly. The Supreme Court, this is, in fact, I've been debating when and how to write something more in depth about this. But there was a case 10 years ago where the Supreme Court had to decide whether you have a First Amendment right to lie. And the answer is that you do. And maybe we should, because I don't think we want the government deciding what's truth or what's a lie. But at the same time, we've lost any ability to control these conversations, and there are just right now, you've got too many bad actors with too much money, who are much too interested in what they've discovered disinformation can do to them. And Elon Musk is Exhibit A, but he's not the only one who's out there. But
no, they're all out. Yeah. Well, I
yeah,
don't know. This one, I have to admit, I disagree with you somewhat. And I'm a writer, and I do these videos, Will, and maybe I don't disagree with you because you were saying hedging a little bit there. And we can talk. There's fire in a crowded theater. You can't threaten the president's life. We do sometimes say there are things that are too dangerous. When I sat there, let me say this quickly, and I looked at my French friend in the face and told him the kind of stuff you can say here. He's like, you would go to prison here. You can't do that. In Germany, you can't show Nazi symbols, right? Or you go to prison. I think you can still have free speech and still have robust laws that disinformation that may harm people. It's one thing if you want to say it to a friend in private, no problem. If you're putting it in front of millions of people, on social media, I think that changes the equation, and I think that makes it dangerous. And I don't think that should be free speech. I think that and other countries have managed to do that are democracies.
I mean, what happened, and I think it's a story that hasn't really gotten enough attention, even though I mean, the story's out there, but I don't think enough people have followed this. But I mean, the thinking after 2016, after that election, and not just the fact that Trump won, but also the Russian disinformation campaign and all of that. The thinking was, well, what if we put in a robot? It's not that we are passing laws about what people can say or can't say, but what if we try and have a robust infrastructure that fights disinformation, right? What if we create academic centers? What if we have government offices that, again, they're not telling you what to say, they're not censoring, but they are trying to counteract disinformation, because, when it comes to something like COVID and public health or something, I mean, disinformation can be deadly.
It can kill people. That's what I'm saying about, or wars or natural disasters, LA, North Carolina. Like, this can get people killed. And to me, at that point, I don't think you have a right to share disinformation online. I really don't.
Probably no. I mean, systematically, I mean, the right shut down that whole effort. The government offices were, people were badgered into resigning, and they've been shut down or defunded.
Yep.
I mean, the Elon Musk budget deal of December 20 eliminated a anti-disinformation program in the State Department.
So weird. Elon Musk could be against disinformation. Oh, Will, we lost you. Will. Okay, guys, hold on. Can you guys still hear me okay? Will, are you there? Will has gone dark. Can you guys hear me? That's a start. I want to get Will in here. How about this? I'm going to text him, let him know. Oh, is he back? No. Okay, let him know that we lost him and he can come back in. Hey, buddy, we lost you. You can come back in. Oh, he's coming back in. Excellent.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never got a phone call while I was on a live stream before. So
I guess that's what happens. Well, I was able to remove the other you.
Somehow hanging up the phone hung up me too. So, well, I do need to run. So, but I did want to come back to thank you for having me on and
oh, sure. Is there two last things quickly? One, do you leave people with anything, about your thoughts about Trump and what we need to do? And the second one, you can tell everybody where to find you.
Yeah, well, definitely you can find me. I have a weekly newsletter every Tuesday, or I didn't this week because I was on vacation, but most Tuesdays I have one, and it's just go to inquirer.com, inquire with an I, inquirer.com/bunch, and all you got to do is just punch in your email address, and you get it for free in your inbox every Tuesday.
I read it every week. I want to make sure you all know it is one of the. I'm dead serious. No BS. It's one of the first things I look at when it comes out. Will covers everything and gives you. It's really good. So
yeah.
subscribe.
So if you get that newsletter, it will tell you, how to subscribe to the Inquirer, so you can read all my columns. Because you do, I think you get one or two stories for free, but then you do hit the paywall, because that's how we pay my salary, which is not that important, but how we pay the salary of other great journalists who cover Philadelphia and cover other news. And
your salary is kind of important, Will, as long as you like to eat. And
yeah, well, I do,
have a roof over your head.
People may have noticed I do like to eat, so there's that.
Oh, stop it! That wasn't the point.
No,
is that
the other?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the other thing I'll leave people with is more an immediate thing, which is barring some calamity, which I do have calamities from time to time, but barring that, I'm off to DC for a couple days. I'm going to I'm going to try and see if I can capture
Oh,
the
God.
Nurembergness of the of Trump's big rally on Sunday
Via
afternoon.
con Dios, my friend.
Yeah, and come up with something to say about the inauguration the next day. So yeah, so definitely, if you want to subscribe to the Inquirer, or check out my feed on Blue Sky, and follow my coverage of the big change that's coming on this weekend. I'll be out there in my thermal underwear that I just bought, and
Nice.
yep, and maybe some reporting. So,
Are you going to say
so I
what
think,
brand it is? Are you doing product placement here or no? I'm
it's
just
fruit of
kidding.
it's fruit of the loom. So I just got it. I just got it delivered. So I have to.
Make sure they give you a check for that. Okay. There's at least like 3,000 or 4,000 people in here. You deserve some money for that.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I don't know if that's kosher, but
That may not work with the Philly Inquirer, but you know.
no, yeah. Well, that's yeah. We're nonprofits. I guess I'm not supposed to profit. So
Yeah.
um,
Well, you know what? I and everybody here have profited from your appearance here today.
well, thanks
Because
thanks for having me again, and we'll do it again sometime.
always will.